Thank you for singing. And we never know what God will do. I was at Calvary Church here in West Lafayette for about 10 years or so, and Daniel, the pastor there, told a story not long after he came, and he said he went to youth camp. How many have been to youth camp? I mean, some been to youth camp, some of the greatest memories. It was a great time. And Daniel's from Texas, and they were having a nice Thursday night, always a Thursday night prayer thing. And at the end of the week, you're hoping that some of the teenagers have heard, maybe they want to share some things. And if you wanted to share something or make a profession of faith, to come to the fire. And at least where I came from, we'd get a pine cone and throw it in the fire. It kind of keeps. In Texas, I don't know what they do out there. Maybe they just chunk a piece of coal in there and let her go. I don't know. But Daniel talks about this guy that all week he was just a pest. He was annoying, and when they got together for chapel and sang, he couldn't sing with a lick. He is annoying. He said, be glad when the week was over, so this guy would go home. On one Thursday night during that week, this guy came forward to say something, and Daniel's thinking, thank goodness, going forward. And the guy said, I ain't got much to offer God, but if he can take me, I want him, and I want to know him. And somebody said, what's your name? He said, David Crowder was his name. David Crowder. And what God did with the Texas boy. Whether he can sing or not, it doesn't matter. God, he has some of the most prolific lyrics of songs. That's why we sing them. And God will use us. And God takes bad times, difficult times. Today I want to talk in a kind of a final chapter of this encounter series. We talked a lot about Jesus encountering people and in a variety of ways. I want to look at it a little different today, an encounter, but one from the Old Testament, from the book of Genesis, chapter 37. And I want to talk about when waiting is not wasting. Now, some people are really very, very patient. And if you're that kind of a person, God bless you. I'm not. But sometimes we think waiting is just wasting. It's as simple as driving around town. I think, if I hadn't turned off there, here I'm wasting time. Wasting time. Or I go to some known, I won't say the name of the store, to buy groceries, and it's like you're in the line forever and forever. Just wasting time, wasting time. Sometimes waiting is not fun, but sometimes waiting can be used for a lot of good things. But from a spiritual perspective, from God's perspective, waiting is never wasting when you're waiting on God. His time is perfect, His timing. And timing is perfect. There's nothing better than timing. There's the proper time to say certain things, and there's the time not to. The timing of when you're going to say something, the timing is everything. To the farmer, it's about timing of getting things into the soil. Then you have to trust God. He does the weather part. So everything has its season. So we come to a familiar story about Joseph, and this story has been told. We have seen it. I can remember in Sunday school class as a kid when the teacher would sit on these little bitty chairs that to this day I never have understood how they got back up. There were little bitty chairs like we were sitting in, and they sat down really low, and they had this huge picture. And to this day, I can close my eyes, and I can see this picture portraying Joseph and his coat of many colors. And so it's been a favorite Bible story throughout the years. And quite often that has been the focus. The coat, the jealousy of his brothers, how they reacted. And they just, they did some pretty low stuff, didn't they? I mean, this is pretty nasty, what they did to their own brother. But I want to focus on Joseph's encounter with God in a way that kind of is a part of this story, but less on the part about what his brothers did, which is horrible, but how he reacted to it. So I want to begin in chapter 37, just verses 3 and 4. Now Israel, his name was changed, Jacob to Israel, loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a varied colored tunic. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of them. And so his brothers saw that their father loved him. I mean, sometimes we don't think it's obvious, but it is. Maybe not you, but everybody sees it. So his father showed favoritism, and that just added to the brothers' hatred even of him, and could not speak to him on friendly terms. So, but when the brothers saw that the father loved him, they just simply could not continue to carry on with the daily life. So they conjectured this crazy idea of taking him out. They made up this story about how he was killed, and I mean, this is really bad. What they did was really, I couldn't even think of that. This is really a bad thing to do to your brother, and lied about it. But I want to focus on what happened. And of course, they sold, a caravan came through, and they sold him into slavery. They sold their own brother into slavery. Let me scoot right through that little historical corridor just for a minute. You have this coat of many colors. He had dreams. Now, this is the other reason they didn't like Joseph. He had dreams of his family bowing down to him. Not a good dream. So his brothers plotted to kill him. They sold him into slavery. He was 17 years old. The brothers told the father that a wild beast had killed him. Then, and of course, he gets over in the other part of the world, and he became a friend, captain of the bodyguard to Pharaoh, brought Joseph and found favor with Potiphar and his responsibilities, and also found favor with Potiphar's wife. Another story. Potiphar's wife then falsely accused Joseph. Joseph ends up in jail. Later on to join Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker and candlestick maker club. That last part is not true. By the candlestick. So Joseph interprets dreams. Now get this. When you don't know what God is doing, you do what you do. Apparently, he could interpret dreams. So instead of complaining, instead of saying, why God, why me, why this, he interpreted dreams while in prison. And when these interpretations became true, this got Pharaoh's attention. Meanwhile, 2 more years passed. Pharaoh has more dreams. Joseph is asked to interpret his dreams, and Joseph did. And later became second to the Pharaoh himself in chapter 41, verses 41, 42. Joseph, I'm going to come back to this in a second. Joseph was 30 years old when all this took place, some 13 years after he had arrived, as we see in chapter 41, verses 46. And then they had the 7 years of famine came, and at the end of this came. This is where he and the brothers got back together, and that's where a lot of people preach on this story. And it is an incredible story of love and redemption and forgiveness. And so all the people in the land came looking for relief, and there in Egypt they could find it. And guess who was in charge of passing out the food? The stories continued with his brothers who came And though at first he kept his identity concealed, soon revealed, and you know the rest of the story. What I want to focus in on, what do you and I do when wasting time and waiting on God to do what He has to do, in so many cases seems like a waste to us. There's several things I want to share with you about what we can do, what we can't do, and they sound incredibly simplistic, but they're very true. The first one is this. Whenever you find yourself in a place that you would rather not be, now let me pause. Have you ever been, don't raise your hand, have you ever been in a place that you would rather not be? I don't mean this in any sort of a bad way or any sort of clandestine thing. I'm just saying in general. Maybe you moved somewhere. Maybe you changed jobs. You say, "Boy, I wish I stayed at that other job." Or you went to school and you thought, "Oh, I wish I had done something different." Have you ever been somewhere and thought, "I don't know if I'm at the right place"? The first thing I want us to grasp is a very simple thing. When we get to that place, give everything to God. Now, how complicated is that? I mean, really, that's so simplistic. I mean, it's overwhelming, isn't it? But we say that so quickly. When things come and trouble comes, maybe you shared with a friend, I shared with people, I said, how do we get to that place where we can just give that to God? We say it all the time. So do I. But when I begin to think about the simplicity of this powerful statement, it becomes overwhelming. What does it mean to give everything to God in my life? And usually it's the part that's causing the problem or is keeping us from moving forward. You go back to the story of the rich young ruler. Remember, he was not just to give anything back, but to give all of your wealth. Why was that a problem? Because he had a lot of it. It wasn't about give back all your marble collection, or your card collection, or your Hot Wheels. Anybody have Hot Wheels? I don't anymore, but my grandson does, by the hundreds, But it was about what is keeping you, rich young ruler, from going this path, and what's holding him back. So to hear the words, for me, while I'm waiting, not understanding what God is doing, affirming that God is not wasting my time, He asks me to give Him everything that I have. And of course, that's not always material. It could be anything, including that. And for me, it's what does that mean? It's so easy to say, I'll give it away. I'll give everything to God. What does that mean? What if God got really specific? Because when you trust God to lead your life, it involves all of you, all of us. There are no part-time Christians. You either are growing and maturing as a Christian, or you're sliding back. There's no, let's just stop, take a break. This Jesus stuff is getting weary. No, it's giving everything to God. Because in life, there will be many things that will catch your eye, but few things will catch your heart. You know the difference? Have you felt that difference? I mean, there's a lot of things that are flashy and catchy, and like, wow, that caught my eye. But then one day you come across something that your heart got involved with that. And maybe it was an event. Maybe it was the beauty of nature. And yes, I guess it could be early on in your dating. Someone caught your eye and stole your heart. And for all of us who are married, you ought to say, yes, that's what happened to us, right? I He caught my eye and stole his heart, and she's been taking my money ever since, or you can say it the other way around just to be fair, If you don't get that balance, I catch holy stuff after I get out of church. And it's like, oh, it goes both ways, and it does. What do we do when we give everything to God? What does that mean? And sometimes I'm not sure we know until we get to a place that we don't have. Let's take something really simple. Last night, you and I heard all this craziness, thunder, lightning going on. And sometimes, as you know, it knocks out the power. Now, we're talking just about losing electricity. But the next morning, you got to get up and go to church. And you worked in the yard all day Saturday. And you need a shower before you come to church, just saying. You need to do something, get some things ready. And it literally changes everything we do. Some of us adapt to that quite easily because we've had to. We're a little bit more familiar with it. But something as losing electricity. Simple as water is bad. You can't drink your water. You got to get bottled water. You got to do those little things that changes your life. It becomes very uncomfortable because we don't have the similarity and the familiarity with those things around us that make us feel at home and sometimes feel close to God. Do we feel as close to God when we're in the nice, quiet corners of our homes with our cup of coffee, with the sunshine barely coming up over the horizon, with a nice little warm song of somebody singing in the background, as we do out on some mission trip, lost, hungry, not knowing where we're going, not sure if we'll live? Have you ever been there? Now, most of us probably haven't. Most of us have not had that place of life and death. Some of you have. Some of you have. We're going to make it. We're going to make it or not. So we get to these places in our lives where we have to think, now, God, what do I do? And sometimes when we say we got to give it up to God, do you realize that sometimes giving it all to God means I give Him what I have, which may be nothing? Sometimes the best place for us to be is not standing or moving forward or trying to figure out where to go. Sometimes the best place is on our knees, praying, being quiet, and listening. Joseph, through all these years in prison, those many years, can you imagine? Every morning you wakes up in the same jail cell for some 13 odd years. Think about it. We read the story in less than 13 years, right? We read it in 13 minutes. He didn't have the end of the story. So think about all these years. He felt my brothers betrayed me. They threw me away. I'm in a foreign country. I'm in this jail cell, a place that I didn't earn, I don't deserve. Dear God, where are you? Nothing. 13 plus years? I mean, I get impatient after 13 seconds in a line at a certain grocery store that I won't name. Or long, drivers. I mean, that's another issue I need help with. But we don't understand. We say, well, I prayed and prayed and prayed, and I don't know that God is wanting to do this. How do you know? Well, I think I've given up everything to God. How do you know? Well, I prayed and prayed and prayed, and it just seems like God hasn't opened that door. What do you mean by opening the door? Do you think opening the door will be the right direction? Well, opening the door for Jonah was in the wrong direction. Well, so which door will open for you? In God's perspective, there is no time. In ours, we got all that time. But what do we do when we're waiting for God God's got you in His waiting room for whatever reason. What do we do? And why do we think God has forgotten us, doesn't care for us, that our concerns are no longer His concerns just because He doesn't answer when we think He should? Joseph was in a hole for a long time. But he did what he could, and that's what I'm going to focus on to finish out this message. The second thing is, you wait for God's timing. Give everything to God. I mean, what could Joseph give? God, here I am. This is it. So you wait for God's timing. And there are two errors that most of us make when we delay or are waiting on God. We either rush ahead of God or we lag behind. It goes both ways. It's like I'm praying, God doesn't seem to answer my prayer, so everybody feels like we should do this. Say yes. Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to take it. Boom, there we go. Well, that's not always the best way. Sometimes the vote of the majority is not the way to go. I'm sure glad little David didn't go with the majority. Aren't you? Get out of there, David. That giant is 20 times bigger than you. You can't do it. God had already said to little David, it is not about what is in your hand or not. When I am with you, that rock is as good or better than any spear, sword, whatever they've got. And he came to a place of faith that said, I'm going to give everything to God. And if you've watched that movie that they did recently, it's an incredible rendition of it. The Story of David, or what? Or something like that. Incredible. You need to watch that. He gave God all he had. He didn't go over there and say, well, they tried to put Saul's armor on him. Remember? Hey, you go out there, you got to put, he couldn't even fit in Saul's armor. Saul is said to be shoulders and head higher than most men. Put on that David was a little guy. David gave God all he had. God, I know I should have a better uniform. Maybe I should borrow a spear or two. And it's like, what do you have in your hand? I got some rock. Get some rock. Got a slingshot. He gave him what he could. He didn't rush ahead of him. He certainly didn't lag behind, though everybody else said, David, go back home. He didn't. Two things Joseph did right while he waited was that he was faithful to God, and he decided to do what he could while he waited. Sometimes it's not that we do all that we would like to see, but we do what we can. Sometimes we can do nothing more. We can't do more than that. We can only do what we can with what we've got, and we have a rock and a slingshot. For Moses, it was a rod, a plain old rod. What do you have in your hand, Moses? That's just got a staff, plain ordinary staff. But when Moses gave all of that to God, that staff became a rod of God. And it parted the seas. It parted the ways. It cleared the path for God to do His work in and through His people. The third thing, waiting on God is never a waste of time. God is never, and this is really key, if the ice cream is still affecting you like it is me, listen to this. This is really good. God is not as interested in your circumstances as much as He is your response to your circumstances. Now let that soak for a minute. I have to let that thing soak. Maybe sit and sour, but I got to wait for it to soak in. Because think about, wait, you mean God ain't concerned about our circumstances? Yes, He is, but He is more concerned about my response. What will I do under pressure? How will I react under pressure? Most of the time, people can really keep their act together good. They can look like, Billy Graham or Lottie Moon or some famous spiritual. We can look good. We especially look good on Sunday. In fact, by the way, y'all look great on Sunday. You look great. But when things get under pressure, I mean, what happens? What happens when things change and your life gets inundated with life and persons and family problems and money and life and going and not going and complain? Does families ever not argue? Maybe. And then all of a sudden, this mild-mannered young person finds a breaking point, and then what really is on the inside comes out. You ever got a sponge? Squeeze it, whatever's in there comes out, if there's anything in it. What is in us, oftentimes, when under pressure, comes out. What does that look like? What does that look like? So I think that we have to trust Him and to respond, because God's looking for the response. God understands the full picture. He knows what's happening from start to begin, but He's really interested in how do we respond. How do we respond to that? The last thing I want to share with you is trust that God is working through you to fulfill your purpose in life and in the lives of others. Last part of that, trust that God is working through you and in the lives of others. You know, particularly in families, church families, we think sometimes it's just about God working through us, but God is also working with other people through those same circumstances to bring about His purpose for you and for all. And when it doesn't seem like God is working around you, trust that He is. God uses His waiting room to heal and to form character in us. Because when we are waiting on God, we are never wasting time. From the New Testament, a final word. For I am sure that God who began a good work within you will continue His work until it is finally finished on that day when Christ Jesus comes back again. For what He has begun, He will finish in your life. And amen, and thank you for that. May we pray. God, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for times when we are waiting and waiting, and we seem as if, God, some of us, we don't wait well. We don't understand. We don't understand, and I don't. But as we wait for you to work about the pieces of our life that need to be in place before we can move forward, help us to trust you because you're trustworthy. Help us to remember of your faithfulness because you are. We can remember your goodness to us when we thought things were bad, but you're always good, and you brought about your purposes in our life. So God, help us today. Whatever it means, it may be really something very little, it may be big. Whatever it means to say, God, what do I need to give you? What do I need to wait on? Because when I'm waiting on you, I'm not wasting time. And help us, Father, to give us the strength of your Holy Spirit to respond in a way that brings glory to Christ.